Hey everybody, it's Zach here from the Ed Boys, and welcome to episode 3 of the Wolf of the Grain Exchange. Today I'm going to be buying items for a low price and then basically selling them back for a higher price. So far, the big deal in the series has been all these low-level items, these supplies like Zulrah scales and runes and ores and everything like that. And I'm sure to someone who's new to flipping, that seems pretty good. I'm making money. I've gotten up to 5 mil doing mostly that stuff, and so far so good. But to someone who's a little bit more experienced, I'm sure they're looking at it and saying, this guy seems to only flip death runes and Zulrah scales, and as much as that has worked so far, it's really never going to make me too much money per hour, so it's nothing spectacular. I have tried my hand at some more expensive items I did in the last episode, and it started to work pretty well, but now that I'm at 5 mil and I actually have a stack to play with, I feel more comfortable buying my supplies like these Zulrah scales. I can flip all 18,000 at once and still buy some of these more expensive items like Kraken tentacles and serpentine helms. So I'm starting to try to mix them in more. In general, make sure that I'm flipping multiple items at a time. I really started off just trying like one thing and just flipping that. Since I didn't really have that much money, it's not like I could really buy a bunch of death runes and a bunch of blood runes at once. But now that I can really spread it out, do many items at once and a much bigger variety of items, the profit has started to increase, but it's nothing spectacular yet. I really don't want to brag about it because there's nothing to brag about. It's been fairly slow, but it's working, and you know, that's the big part. As long as I get this going, I'm still at a smaller cash stack. I always, when people ask me about flipping, I suggest that you have a 10 mil plus cash stack when you try it. Not because I'm such a professional flipper and that's the number, that's just, I feel like a 10 mil is a pretty good number to try to flip some items. And we're almost to that point. I do feel like I'm actually at a decent enough cash stack that I can start flipping and say that I'm flipping. I can tell people. When I was at 1K, I didn't want to mention like, hey guys, trying to do some flipping now that I have 7K. You guys have got me a little bit off track. So at this point I was kind of pondering what exactly I wanted to do next. I didn't really have a bunch of those high level items in mind because I didn't want to do anything that was worth like 600k. I didn't feel like I could buy enough of them at this point. So while I stuck with some supplies, I kind of thought about going back to some of these mid-range items like the Helm of Neatsnot. Now if I say that incorrectly, I don't know if I've mentioned this, I just don't know how to say it, I'm sorry. This Helm of Neatsnot actually turned out to be pretty good because you could trade up to like 70 of them, and I was able to get 1k a flip a lot of the time. So 70k, nothing spectacular, but if it only takes me like 10 minutes and it doesn't take up that much of my cash stack, that's really not that big of a deal. 10 minutes is probably an exaggeration. It's really more like 20, but it still works out pretty well, honestly, if I'm able to do this and 2 other items, like blood runes and these magic fangs. Magic fangs clearly go as a more expensive item. These are along the lines of those Kraken tentacles and serpentine helms, and honestly, those have been the most successful ones for me, and that's probably because they're the ones that I've tried the most. I have not branched out to too much more on the expensive side quite yet, but I really would like to get up to more of a 10 mil cash stack before I do that, mostly because I'm just not as experienced, and right now the fact that I'm making money with what I'm doing just makes me feel a little bit more comfortable with my flipping ability. One thing I've really been trying to get a little bit better at with pricing is realizing that even if I can squeeze an extra 500 coins out of a flip that was originally 1k, if it takes twice as long, that's not necessarily worth it, if that makes any sense. Mathematically, that's just you don't make as much money. If it's going to take you twice as long, you would want to make twice as much money at least. So I've been trying to dull down my price ranges. What's the word I'm thinking of? Profit margins, excuse me. Trying to dull down my profit margins a little bit, as crazy as it seems. But if it helps me get a little bit faster flips, I've been working with that to see if that helps me out a little bit. And it would make sense that would help out, but I don't have any numbers on that quite yet. That's just kind of what I've been thinking about lately while trying to flip. So at this point, I've gotten past the challenge of seeing if I could make a decent cash stack, if it's possible for me to start at such a low amount of money and still be able to flip my way up into some good cash and eventually get to 100 mil. Now that I've made a little over 5 mil, it's kind of obvious that I could do this to 100 mil, but if I was only doing it at like 200k an hour, that would be 500 hours to 100 mil, and I would really like to be a little bit quicker than that. So I guess the new challenge is trying to see if I can actually get some good money rates. Not anything spectacular, but if I could bump up the rates to 400 or 500k an hour, I would be a lot happier with that. Here was an item that was a little bit crazy. I tried out the katana, which is just another one of those more expensive items. One of the most expensive that I've tried yet. It's almost 500k. They were a little bit low in price when I went to try to buy them, so I was a little iffy if they would buy, but it turns out a few of them did buy, as you can see. I got 4 of them to buy fairly quickly, and that 5th one I don't believe I ever got. Yeah, I just canceled it there. And then when I tried to sell them back, I went for 530k a piece, which is, 35k per flip is still not like really anything to brag about, but it's one of the best I've ever gotten. And at 35k per flip with 4 of them, that's 140k from just a single buy and sell, which is kind of crazy. That's a lot more than I've made from any of the other items that I've tried. It didn't go too quickly with selling, but as you could see, it started to work. I got one of them to sell in probably about 5 minutes, but then the rest of them took a little while. And then you saw me try some death runes there, but those I just ended up canceling that. Turns out that it was time to get a new bond. I definitely think I could have made a little bit more money on this bond, and on future bonds I'm going to try to sit down a little bit more often so that I don't have to buy as many of them. One of the big things I would like to start doing is when my 4-hour limit resets, I want to make sure that I at least sit down and do some of those really quick, like Zulrah scales for instance, so that I can get a little bit extra profit. I usually only sit down for one of those 4-hour periods a day and do a little bit of flipping then. I started trying out some new items once I got back up to the cash stack I was at before I bought the bond. One of the biggest things I tried were some seeds. Ronar seeds ended up working very well, and I tried out some Snapdragon seeds eventually. I was kind of surprised that it took me this long into the series to start trying some seeds. I've been bragging about supplies and saying that the supplies and cheaper flips have been working for me really well, and then I went out and didn't pay for any seeds. This is not really a cheap item like a death rune. It's still 25k for one seed, but it's a little bit lower than a medium item. I'm not in the 50 to 70k range, and I can trade a couple of hundred of them every 4 hours, so it really turns out to be a pretty good amount of cash. The Varrox Flails, as you just saw, also did pretty well. I want to try some more Barrows items in the future. I don't know exactly which ones I'm going to be trying yet. I'll probably try all of them. I shouldn't say that. But I don't know which ones are exactly going to be good, and it kind of depends on the timing, too. Sometimes the profit margin just isn't there for some reason. But the biggest thing that I got out of this item testing group that I just went through were the seeds for sure. I put that on my list of things that I'll try to repeat every 4 hours for a little bit of extra profit. But for now, I think what I need to start doing is looking into some more of those more expensive items that I can get some bigger cash per flip. Because those katanas getting 35k per flip, it's kind of a big deal. It's very helpful. That took me roughly 30 minutes to do, so at that rate I'd be making about 280k an hour, which is one of the best rates that I've gotten so far. So after playing around with some new items, I started to approach 10 mil and decided to go back to some of the normal items that I had been flipping earlier. So this is kind of the time in the video, this next 2.5 to 3 minutes, where I'll go back through the list of items that I have found to be some of the best flipping items so far. This isn't like my full list, and I'll try to have a more legitimate full list for you later on in the series. But this is probably our first big checkpoint where I've actually flipped a handful of different items, so make sure you pay attention to which items I'm going through here. I'll talk about a couple of them, but at least notice which ones they are, because those are the ones that so far I've felt have been treating me right. So even after this episode, the Zulrah scales still have to be my MVP. And it's purely because you can trade so many of them, and they're traded so often that it doesn't take any time. So once you get to a point where I can buy, in this case I was buying 6,000 at a time, but I could even afford all 18,000 in a single flip. Once you get to that point, it really only takes like 5 to 6 minutes to flip all of them. And even if you only make 3 coins per scale, that's 54k in 5 or 6 minutes. And that's nearly 600k an hour at a rate like that. So you clearly can't do it for a full hour, but every 4 hours, once you can finally flip your Zulrah scales again, it's a really quick, easy way to get 50 plus k. Sometimes you get lucky, you make over 100k in that flip if you get a really good profit margin. After that, the death runes of all the runes have seemed to be trading the most. People clearly buy and sell a lot of death runes, so those are fairly quick. But in this episode, finding those Ronar seeds was one of the biggest thing for me. The Snapdragon seeds did pretty well, but I found that the Ronars traded quicker and had a much more consistent profit margin. The other item that was pretty good for this episode would be the Helm of Neatsnot. I put it right up there with the Ronar seeds. I usually got a better profit margin of about 1k, like almost guaranteed with the Helm of Neatsnot, whereas the Ronars would drop down to 600 or 500 coins occasionally. The thing with the Ronars, though, you can trade a lot more per hour. You can only trade up to 70 Helm of Neatsnots. You know what, forget it. The Helms, you can trade up to 70 of them an hour. And with the Ronar seeds, I think it's 100. It could even be 200, but I'm pretty sure you can trade up to 100 of them an hour. Either way, comparing these items is almost silly because I still flip all of them. It's not like, excuse me. It's not like the fact that I think Ronar's a little bit better than Snapdragons that I don't flip both of them. You have a 4-hour limit anyway with the amount that you can buy, so you might as well flip as many items that are working. So that's what I'm trying to do with this list of items I've been creating that I feel are doing pretty well when it comes to flipping. What I would really like to do in the upcoming episodes, now that the cash stack is starting to grow a pretty good amount, is start adding some big items on that list. The Kraken tentacles, the Magic Fangs, and the Serpentine Visage, they've all been pretty good, but I'd like to start flipping some items that are actually worth some money. Try to make, 50 to 100k in a single flip instead of 5k in a single flip and just trying to do that 10 times. We're looking to start wrapping up the episode here, though, everybody. I really hope you enjoyed today's episode. I know that I did. This actually was one of my favorite ones so far, even though this is only the third one. Okay, not just one of my favorites. This was my favorite so far, episode number 3. I enjoyed it a lot. I don't know why. I just felt like I got a good flipping rant in there that I hope you guys all enjoyed, too. Either way, it looks like we wrapped this episode up landing at 10 mil, which doubles our stack in this episode. Pretty killer. Making our way towards 100 mil. Like I said before, I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Thank you everyone for watching today's video. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to click on that like button and tell us what you enjoyed about it. If you're looking for some more RuneScape videos like this one, then be sure to join the cul-de-sac by subscribing for more. We will see you next time.